There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Welcome to No Filter. I'm Mia Friedman, and a couple of weeks ago, I saw a headline on a gossip site. You might have also seen it, and it made me so angry that I posted about it. The headline was, Pip Edwards' revenge body. P.E Nation founder shows off her incredibly toned physique in a skimpy bikini. Now, Pip Edwards, as the headline said, is the co-founder, actually, of an incredibly successful business called P.E Nation. But this article had pictures taken without her knowledge or permission of her at the beach, just trying to live her life, going for a swim. And along with it was an entirely made-up story about how she'd supposedly lost weight to take revenge on a famous ex-boyfriend who'd been in the media because he'd had a drunken drama after allegedly being caught cheating on his girlfriend. Pip Edwards wasn't even there when all of this happened. But her name was mentioned and she was forced to release a statement that became iconic. This is not my circus. In other words, please remove me from this narrative. I want no part of it. And yet, this gossip site and many others managed to reduce an independent, self-made businesswoman who has had enormous success and is so many things, including being a single mother of a teenage son, and a business owner, and an icon in the fashion industry, and a trailblazer. They managed to reduce her into an accessory. And the idea that her body was somehow changed or modified in response to the drama in an ex-boyfriend's life struck me as just so deeply unfair. So I posted about it. People left a comment on my post and we started talking. Today, you're going to hear that conversation and you're going to get a glimpse of a woman who is finally finding the courage to speak for herself and make her own narrative. How do you reclaim and reassert your identity from a narrative and a circus that's not of your making?
You start to talk the real shit. Like you start to really speak your truth. And I guess that's why I'm on here today.
Pip Edwards is a force. She describes herself as turbocharged. You'll hear that in a second. And it's always struck me as absurd that such a driven, powerful and successful woman is not just this time, but so often reduced publicly to a socialite or an influencer or a support player in someone else's circus. Well, not anymore. Pip Edwards is finally finding her voice. Now, it was hard to get this interview with you, firstly because you don't talk to anyone, but secondly, you don't have a lot of time. And we were DMing and you said, I have between 12:30 and 1:30 on Tuesday. And I was like, right, we'll make it work.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's reflective of your life.
Yeah.
If I looked at your life from paparazzi photos or Instagram, I would think, but what does she do all day? She just has to get ready to go out and take some selfies.
Just do Pilates all day long.
Do a Pilates class. Can you talk me through your day yesterday from the minute you woke up to the minute you went to bed?
Yeah, so woke up, my son was sick, had to deal with a mountain of homework to do that he hadn't done. And
is he HSC this year?
He's in year 11. He's fatigued. He plays a lot of basketball. So, just that was a bit of a spanner in the morning. I then go to Pilates, which is my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday routine. Mm-hmm. And that is my only hour to myself where I can actually distract my mind and focus on my body. So that's awesome.
You go out to a class.
A studio, Fluid Form. And I've been going to her for 7 years now, one-on-one. Like it's quite intense, but it's really good. And I broke a sweat there, which was great. And then I get into the office and yesterday I had a photo shoot. I started off with a photo shoot and then I went into a product meeting.
What was the photo shoot for? Was it for media or was it for something to do with the brand?
It was a media photo shoot around my profile.
Okay.
For a certain lift out coming.
Understand. So similar to this, it's like as the face of a brand, as a high profile personality in the face of a company, you have to do media. That's part of your job.
Media shot. Yeah, especially when it comes around, I would guess post the Stella coming out of that, like there's a lot more of that. Yeah, so I had the media photo shoot, then I had regular product meetings every day.
So what's a product meeting?
Well, that's sit down with the design team, with the product team. I'm going to talk a bit of internal language, but we're selling in Q4. We've just finished selling in Q4 this year. We're about to sell in Q1 next year, so Jan, Feb, March, and then we've just finished designing Q2 next year, and we're starting to design Q3 next year, which is July, August, September. So we've just got to, you analyze the data, you've got to keep bringing that back and reviewing and changing. So I love to hold their hand through that process, and so I'm quite involved in the trenches there. So that's a product meeting.
How many people work for you?
50-ish. Yeah.
And what kinds of things do they do?
It's a full setup. We've got, HR, logistics, finance, marketing, sales, online, digital marketing, design, product development. I mean, it's a fully functioning masterpiece.
And your role what is your title?
Creative director.
And what does that mean? What do you do?
I think I set the vision, the energy across the business, but I think if we were to split, Claire and I split and we divide and conquer. So Claire's got more of a skill set around product and technicality around product, whereas I come from merching, like planning stories, color, creative
design styling,
but visionary across.
Marketing.
Yeah, and then I just go on and then I go on. So Claire would start the product up front. We start together with the creative brief, then she goes into actually doing the technical stuff with her team while I'm prepping all the other stuff with the marketing, sales, online. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got meetings in the middle of the day with the product team. Then what do you do?
Well, Mondays tend to be a little bit more fluid because Tuesdays is the big trade day. So
what does that mean?
Tuesdays, like we, analyze the week's trade from D2C to marketing.
What's
the online.
DTC. Is it, what's it called?
DTC,
direct to consumer.
So we analyze that from all those angles, and then
so you look at all the numbers on Tuesday, what you sold
volumes,
from the week before,
products, print, like analyze it all from
and do you see
international,
that by
local,
store, by outlet?
We look at it by store, by outlet. We even look at it by retailer, so wholesale, and then product level down to numbers, price point, markdown, current.
That sounds quite boring. How?
I fucking love it.
Well, that's what's interesting.
So that's my favourite bit, because I think my favourite part is seeing something turn or not work and then trying to understand why they're not, and then taking that feedback back to the design team and trying to still be disruptive in terms of design, but also the commercial lens, it's a business. So
I want to ask you about that, but how many outlets is P.E Nation sold in?
I think we have around 500 touch points, I think.
So all the numbers and stuff come in on Tuesday.
Yeah, just to wrap it up. They wrap it up on Monday to present Tuesday.
What kinds of things might you learn out of that data?
Well,
that would change what you do moving forward?
This is technically still Q1, so Q1's Jan, Feb, March. We've just wrapped up designing Q1, so I can impact next year's by little tweaks, but we're developing Q2, and so we're a year in advance in designing, but utilising all the information that's available to us today, and it can change and fluctuate, but you can start to pick up regular patterns if you're interested every day, which I am. A graphic might switch off, a colour might not work, not to bring it back, or do we change the Pantone colour?
So you have those kinds of meetings?
All the time.
Yeah.
But we're really working towards this just collaborative across department, because there is a lot of information that we need. So we have those meetings all the time involving head of sales, head of product, design and marketing to kind of be as robust as you can.
Are there some times when you get feedback that it's like you really wanted something to work and it didn't? Like,
of course.
What are some times where
there are some things I would call that like a loss leader? So there's things that are commercially, you look at it and you're like, no brainer, money in the bank kind of.
What would be an example of that? Black leggings.
Black leggings or leopard. Right? That's a no brainer. But then there'd be like a more forward, like panelled, maybe, a little bit more colour blocked, something that's a little bit wild. But I would say that's a brand piece. And I would put my foot down to have it, even though sales were like, no, we're not going to get volume. I go, it doesn't matter if that's part of the story or a new way of styling it forward. We're doing it.
Because you can't build a brand on black
well,
leggings.
if you look at the history of sales in any brand over the last 20 years, I'll say the top 10 products would be black. So where's the colour in that? Like, and when I mean colour, where's the personality? Where's the brand?
Yeah, right. Can you leave the office anytime you want?
Do you know what's really funny? I'm sure I can. I don't. I ask permission because I don't know. That's a weird thing by me.
Who do you ask?
Everyone. I sometimes say to my team, I'm leaving now, like, because I'm a trained worker. That's how I've been brought up. I work my hours.
Well, how do you start a brand?
Wow, shit. Do you know what? The brand, it's such an interesting thing when you are that person that goes on a limb to start a brand. It is personal. It's an energy. It's a feeling. And to create context and feeling around product isn't as easy as it looks. You've got to be really authentic and really believe it, and you've got to live and breathe it and all of that. And when you're so clear on who you are, what your energy is, what your vibe is, the DNA, it makes the whole process a lot easier. So, know who you are, know what you're going for, know what you stand for. It's more of a marketing exercise, really. Like, why do you need the product? And how do you
what problem is the product going to solve?
Yeah.
You had worked within big brands before,
yes.
well-established brands,
yes.
although Subi wasn't that well-established when you were in on the ground floor of Subi, weren't you?
Yeah,
at the early
in
stages.
I got to Subi in early 2004.
Was that before or after the Rats?
That
on
was
the
after.
catwalk?
They did the Rats in 2001.
That was when the Rats came down the catwalk at Australian Fashion Week.
Yeah, and
I made a lot of noise.
I got there. You know what? Subi is an anomaly. Like, I learned a lot there from the boys' club, but they did not compromise on who they were. They were controversial. They were tongue-in-cheek. They had crazy attitude. They were cool. They weren't.
How did that go commercially, though?
They weren't the greatest in terms of like the business acumen.
Yeah.
But it didn't really bother them because they were just so reckless with their authority in who they were. That's a prime example of building a brand. I mean, they did. They sold out. I mean, in those early days, the demand was high because they created that demand. And then they added to that with the whole music scene backing it up and the connections and the international network that they had. And then you start to put the numbers and the science and the structure behind it. And I mean, that's really what it needed in those early days. Yeah.
And then you were Sass & Bide and then General Pants. So you were within well-established
Oh, yeah, and global.
brands.
I mean, Subi was global. I mean, I left there in 2008 and I went to Sass & Bide straight away. And, I mean, mass Sass & Bide, huge national retailer, loved, and, the girls, such a different creative process.
Going from men to women.
Yeah, boys club to mum's club.
Yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, it was amazing because, you could see how much the care and the nurturing was there to staff, but also seeing working mums do it.
You became a mum early, I remember, because
Yeah.
I became a mum way before any of my peers at 25. How old were you?
I fell pregnant at 25.
Yeah. So I remember reading an interview with you in those early days, and I'd kind of done my partying and I was a nana by the time I had a baby, but I didn't get the sense that you were. And you were living in Subi land.
I was right in the epicenter of a crazy social movement,
You were.
It was like the eye of the storm. And everyone around us, it was very fluid, music, fashion, party, nightlife, nightclubs. It all made sense. And it was a really hard time.
How did you manage that?
Well enough. I was so young too. I mean, I was oblivious again. Yeah, like you said, I didn't have many friends that had gone through the process. It was quite lonely being pregnant, to be honest. And the whole body image around, I think I might have been more on the skinny side of life prior, given, how busy we were. And that whole body image change was quite confronting.
When you were surrounded by skinny models.
When I was pregnant, I just, And obviously working in the industry, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around how drastically your body changes.
What did it do to your headspace?
Well, at that time, there was a lot going on that I don't remember it being a great experience, but I don't really remember it. I'm almost like blocked it out. But Dan was traveling a lot. Subi was going through a lot of change. There was, potential investors from the US. So I spent a lot of time kind of, dealing with that. I had my parents though.
Why did you decide to have that baby at that time? Because on paper it was a terrible time.
We did make a decision to have a baby. Like it was a conscious decision.
So Dan, your partner at that time, the father of your son,
But we didn't realise, I guess, how quickly it would happen.
You'd been dating for a while. You were working together.
Yeah, and you're on contraception for a long time prior to that.
Why did you want to have a baby at that time? Because you were just madly in love? Yeah. It seemed like a big adventure.
Well, I think it just – if anyone really thinks about having a baby, are you really going to have one in a sense? Like if you really went through the nuts and bolts and the change and everything.
Like on paper.
Sorry, I'm just like being honest.
Yeah.
It's like nothing's going to prepare you for what a baby brings. But if the love and the energy and the passion and the excitement's there and you're swept up in it, well, there's no better time.
What did it do to your identity? Because I remember I was the editor of Cosmo at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say you were at Cosmo.
Yeah, and I didn't mention, obviously the people around me, I didn't hide that I had a baby, but I never wrote about it. So I was never publicly, back then before social media, you could do that. So when I think about it now, that's insane. I was the editor of Cosmo for 7 years.
What a perfect platform to talk about it.
Well, I wrote a column every month, but I didn't ever mention that I had a child. And at the time I told myself it was because I wanted him to have privacy. But I realise now it's my identity wasn't ready to kind of metabolize that idea of myself as a mother.
Yeah. I mean, I'd never held a baby until I'd given birth to Justice.
Same.
So it was all very foreign. I mean, I was terrified to give him a bath. I didn't even know what, I didn't know what to do. But
how was Dan? Was he into it?
Oh, Dan was hands-on at the beginning. Yeah, no, he was a very excited, like he's a little bit more what's the word? I don't know. He can handle that kind of stuff. I was a bit
freaked out.
But honestly, having Justice at that time was a godsend for me.
Why?
Like at the time, there was a lot of adjusting. There was a lot of pressure. I mean, Dan and I split a year after the baby.
You became a single mum.
And I became a single mum. So that's a whole nother story.
I remember reading an interview with you at one stage and you said something about your mum looked after Justice either on the weekend or during the week. I couldn't remember which
during
one.
The week. I'm an only child, so my mum and dad were just so thrilled.
So they like co-parented with you?
Pretty much. I mean, I was still learning. In my mind, I was still a baby. I'd go to all the mothers groups and, all those things, and it'd be like I was quite significantly younger than a lot of the other mums. But at the time, I guess what I didn't realise was that Justice would become my stake in the ground. He would be the grounding force I needed because I lived such a whirlwind tornado kind of life. My general pace in life is turbo. He just brings it home, brings it in. And if I didn't have him, I don't think I would have a connection to a greater purpose. I just wouldn't.
Why?
Well, he's made me find that in myself.
Like the quiet
balance,
space?
The balance, or the selflessness or the thought that, life is bigger than what is in front of you or what's, challenging you. He's the North Star for sure.
So I know exactly what you mean because I remember feeling so relieved at the time, even though parts of it were hard, that I wasn't the centre of the universe anymore. Like there was a relief in that as well as a
I don't
discomfort.
know if I had a relief at the time, but it's more of a hindsight.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no, that's
it's
true.
a hindsight relief. At the time, I mean, I have spoken, not obviously to people, a lot of people, but the pregnancy, it was really hard for me because it's just the sleep deprivation, the challenges around your body, all of that. And to be honest, I had to get back to work. And how was I going to manage?
Because you had to earn money because you're a single mother. And how did you manage that?
It was really hard. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of leaning on my parents, definitely. For the first 8 years, there was a lot of adjustment. And I think that's what almost conditioned me into this multitasking turbo freak that I am. And when I mean freak is like I can manage a lot. I can juggle a lot of things in the air. And I think that's what kind of got me to do that.
Yeah, having a child certainly makes you not waste time.
No, you are absolutely time poor. And, you know, if you've got, like you said, if you've got bills to pay, there's a will, there's a way. I was literally fitting it in, hence even my schedule at the moment. Yeah. I don't waste any time. I don't know whether that's good or bad because it is running on adrenaline.
It's when you're at work, you feel like you're stealing time from your kid, and when you're with your kid, you feel like you're stealing time from work.
And then and then you're at work and you still got to deal with your kids' admin and the school structure and the emails and this. And then when you're at home, when you need to focus on him and the homework, you still got to do the research, the this, the that. You know, so it's nonstop.
I want to ask you about him growing up.
Yes.
Single mums and their sons, very special relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Did he have to be the parent sometimes?
I will say I took a very different approach with parenting him to the way I was parented. No disrespect, mum or dad, but, you know, my parents, like iron fist, very strong people, had a very set way of how I was going to be brought up. It was academic. There were rules. And I abided by them. I had this moral compass towards my parents that, you know, required.
You didn't question their authority.
No, never questioned their authority, required their approval. Still to this day, probably something why I'm in therapy. But
aren't we all?
But Justice, because I had him so young, and I think my parents were quite old when they had me, so there is an age gap. There's a cultural gap and an age gap. I was always going to be a young mum, and Justice and we were going to teach each other along the way. And he 100%, I've been blessed with a kid that just has a knowing, he's sensitive, he's been here 1,000 times before, and he can just strip everything right back to what really counts. And he's phenomenal. His mindset is, literally, he gets up at 5 a.m. No, I have not told him to do any of this, by the way, but he gets up at 5 a.m, does his yoga, stretches, meditates, cold shower to the theme song of Rocky, goes to basketball track, makes his bed, then leaves. I'm just like, my room's a fucking it's been in a tornado,
like someone bring me a
tornado, like literally. But like, I've never made my bed, by the way. Some things you can and can't teach your children, and they just either they know, and it's how you kind of nurture that and allow them to flourish that way. But I've learnt so much from him. Just when I get a bit caught up in my passion, I'd like to say, or my emotion, he can just go, Mum, it's actually not like that.
He can ground you.
Yes.
And also call you on your shit.
Calls me on my shit. Doesn't like it when I call him on his though.
After the break, Pip speaks about the hard parts and the incredible parts of being a single mum to her 16-year-old son, Justice, including what it's been like to co-parent with her ex, Dan Single, and the fallout of his catastrophic injury a few years ago. One of the hardest times as a mother of a son is when they go into that tunnel, that teen tunnel,
So I'm in that.
Where they have to pull away, and if they don't, there's something not quite right. If they haven't pulled away, because either it means they don't feel secure enough or there's something going on, but they need to, and you're not the moon and the stars anymore.
Yeah, I'm in that. I'm in the middle of that.
How are you handling it?
Which has been really hard because I'm not good with one-word answers, and I'm a talker, and he's expecting me to ask him certain questions in a certain way, and I'm not doing it. And so we've had a bit of a breakthrough. Actually, on Sunday, I sent him openly, he wanted to go to see my therapist to start talking about some stuff because I'm like, I really started this opening up and trying to process life too late in life, you know, and I need him.
When did you start going to therapy?
You know, maybe 12 years ago, but not intensely, and I've tried different types of it. And right now I'm really in the zone, and I love where it's taking me and what I'm learning. But it's taking me to go through different types of therapy to find one that I know agrees with
What have you
me.
found now?
More energy-based therapy, like more NLP, neurolinguistics and stuff like that. That's how I talk. That's how I feel. That's where I operate my best. And I know that Justice is the same. So I've almost suggested him to go down that road. And he went for the first time on Sunday, and he was meant to only be there for an hour, and he was there for 2 hours, came home with a just absolute clarity, spirit, really was like wanting to get to the bottom of why he's finding himself in these mind ruts. Like you could just see him getting stuck in his head. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy that he wanted to do that, because his 25-year-old self or his 30-year-old self is just going to be so – and any woman that's out there is so fucking lucky to even have a relationship with my son. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know?
Do you find it's hard – people say, oh, you shouldn't be friends with your kids. You shouldn't try to be friends with your kids. I've always found that very difficult. Like, I just love talking to my kids. I love hanging out with my kids.
Why? Why do people say that?
Well, because it's that they've got friends. What you're meant to be is boundaries and
like
what's
a dictator.
Good for them. And yeah, well, I guess, rules and boundaries, and sometimes, a friend might not necessarily point them in the right direction. They sometimes have to not like you. Do you find that hard?
Yeah. Well,
particularly as a single mum when there's not a second parent.
For a long time, when in the early years, I guess, when Dan spent a lot of time overseas, I was pretty much trying to be that nurturing mum, but trying to be disciplinary and I was very physical, physical in the sense of like doing all the sport stuff, like trying to be like sporty for him. And then I found myself contradicting myself, so trying to put in these boundaries and then going, no, I can't do that to you, kind of thing. So yeah, it's hard, but for me, you're living under the one roof. We're growing up together. I'm learning, he's learning. The dialogue is so open and honest. I wouldn't want it any other way. So, of course, he's my friend.
Yeah.
He's my bestest friend. He knows me best. And they get to like nearly 17 and it's like, he's my confidant. He's my roommate. He's my son. He's a great human. I love talking to him. I want him to talk more. I mean,
yeah.
There's no right or wrong, honestly.
Does he have a relationship with his dad?
Yeah, they have really lately in the last couple of years blossomed, and he does. He sees a lot of the beauty in his dad, which I think's great and wouldn't want it any other way.
Tell me about co-parenting. You split up when Justice was one. You guys have been his parents, or you will always be his parents, but that you've done 16 years almost of co-parenting. Tell me what that's been like. As Dan's been married before, you've had other partners, different people have come in and out of your life. I don't know if Dan's had any more children, but how have you navigated the last 16 years as co-parents?
Well, it's been his Justice is with me full time because Dan doesn't live in Sydney and he lived in America for a significant amount of time. And then post his accident, he came back to Australia and he lives in Byron. So I definitely do the school terms and all the admin around that and the structure. And that's why my mum and dad are so amazing with helping with keeping that on track because it's a lot. And then in the holidays, Dan will have a Justice half the time. So co-parenting in physical terms, maybe not so but co-parenting in...
No, but co-parenting, I mean, in terms of not the logistics because he's been with you all his life, but, when there are big decisions to be made, you don't like...
No, we do confer. There's been, of late there's been some where, I guess this move to send Justice to therapy was a big one and he was obviously all for it. But
so it's understood between you that you take all the decisions.
Not all, but definitely most of them happen under my watch for sure. But Dan's amazing in the sense that he's got quite a crazy spirit to him and he's enthusiastic and he's a big thinker and I think he feels justice with the hope of those dreams. I'm more of a realist, so I'm like, you can dream big because I'm a big dreamer, but we need to take actions and steps to get there to execute. That's the difference that Justice gets.
The balance.
Yeah.
When you referred to Dan's accident, he fell out of a hotel balcony in Paris. did terrible damage, broke.
Yeah, concertinaed his body. I think he died on impact. He was in a coma for 3 or 4 months over there, yeah.
How did you manage that with Justice, and how old was Justice at the time?
Justice was 11. It was an awful experience, especially because Justice and I were here and we couldn't get over there. And I think Justice is still, you know, processing what that means to him, which is also why the therapy was really important to go to. But yeah, I mean, it's not nice, and it's not nice thinking about how that impacts Justice, how that impacts Dan, and we're still dealing, I guess, with the effects of that too.
Is he recovering?
Yeah, I mean, he's fully walking and functioning, you know, but there's elements that are obvious and, you know, there's physical elements and it's still there, the remnants of it. Yeah.
You talking about having to be Justice's mother and his father, and I've heard you talking about the masculine and the feminine in you and in business, and, you know, when you're running a company, you have to be you don't have to be a man, but you have to be.
Are in your masculine. You do not have a choice. I've been put in situations that are a byproduct of a situation. Like I'm a single mum. I'm also an only child, a single mum, raising a son, trying to run a business, run a household, do it. Of course I'm in my masculine. You have to be making decisions all the time. I'm only learning now how to be more soft and vulnerable in a space where I feel safe, but it requires me to feel safe.
It's hard to switch because I know what you mean. You're at work and you have to have armor and you have to do all of those things. And then in a romantic relationship.
But then you have to feel safe in a romantic sense too.
You do.
And history would say I'm not sure if I've ever felt safe.
How good is she? That actually isn't the end of our conversation. The rest of our chat is available for Mamamia subscribers, and that's where we delve into her past relationships. I think there's also a certain type of man who is very attracted to a very strong woman.
Yeah, but then they like to change them.
Breaks you down. Her battle with early menopause and the effect on her fertility.
No one is talking about the fact that all these situations and life choices of being fit and busy and running a business impacts your reproductive health.
And being relentlessly pursued by the paparazzi. What does that feel like?
I've worked out how to manage my Instagram posting to deflect them from where I am or what I'm doing, post later, post once I've left, all this. They still find me. I don't know how.
That episode is available right now for Mamamia subscribers, and there's a link in the show notes if you want to listen or subscribe. Thank you so much to my guest, Pip Edwards. Check out her brand, P.E Nation. It's awesome. The producer of No Filter is Emmeline Peterson. Our executive producer is Eliza Ratliff, with sound production by Madeline Joannou. I'm Mia Friedman, and thanks for having me in your ears.